YouTube? It's Philly J here with Third Dimension Gaming, coming at you with the TG deck profile, the Tech Genus. So I am fairly new with this deck. I picked it up a couple months ago, but I finally figured out a build that I like about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And I thought it'd be a cool way to kick off the fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Summer, because throughout the entire summer, we're just doing fun, casual, kind of like pure decks in a way. So we're going to start with Tech Genus, and we're going to end with, I don't know yet, we'll kind of see where we go. I'm thinking Cosmo maybe, but we'll see how it goes. So that being said, let's just dive in. We're going to start off with 3 copies of TG Rocket Salamander. This is far and away the best first combo piece in your deck. It gets all your combos rolling, and it's really, really easy to find because we play stuff like Small World, and Small World searches pretty much the whole deck because everything is different levels, types, and attributes, so it's really easy to Small World through your way through stuff. So, that being said, TG Rocket Salamander, you contribute 1 TG monster to special summon 1 TG monster from your deck with a different original name than that attributed monster. And if you control a machine TG monster, you can target a 1 level 4 or lower TG in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects, and you can only use each effect once per turn. So, we have a spell that makes all your TGs machines, which is a really cool way to keep your combos rolling because we're doing a lot of machine shenanigans with our synchro summoning and our synchro climbing in this deck. So TG Rocket Salamander being able to search a guy and then monster reborn a guy, super, super useful. Then we're going to play 3 copies of TG Screw Serpent. This guy, if this card is normal special summon, you can target 1 level 4 or lower TG monster in your graveyard except for itself. Special summon that monster, but its effects are negated. And you can banish this card from your graveyard, target a TG monster you control, and increase or reduce its level by 1. And you can only use each effect once per turn. So a lot of this deck has tuners where I personally wouldn't expect tuners to be. Like, I would expect the Rocket Salamander to be a tuner, but the Screw Serpent is the tuner instead. And again, level modulation, really useful for synchro summoning. And another, again, a monster reborn, again, really good for synchro climbing. Then we're going to play 3 copies of TG Werewolf. When a level 4 or lower TG monster is special summoned, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then during the end phase, if this card on the field was destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 TG monster from your deck to your hand except for itself. So again, you can Rocket Salamander, tribute itself, get a guy, bring out the Werewolf, bring out the Screw Serpent, and then you can Screw Serpent effect, Werewolf effect to summon itself from the hand. Again, lots of extending and lots of easy ways to get into your combo pieces. We're playing a lot of 3-ofs in this deck because a lot of the cards in this deck can get you to full combo by themselves. Then we're going to play 3 copies of TG Booster Raptor. If you control a TG monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And you can only special summon TG Booster Raptor this way once per turn. And then once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the grid because it was destroyed on the field this turn, you can add a TG monster from your deck to your hand except for itself. So if they're destroyed, they all cycle themselves in the end phase as far as the old ones go. The new ones not so much, but like your Werewolf, your Booster Raptor, they cycle themselves in the end phase to keep you with a hand advantage. And then because it can special summon itself, it can also trigger your Werewolf to continue your plays. Again, lots of ways to get around certain things, certain aspects of this deck very easily. Then we're going to play 3 copies of TG Drillfish. Like I said, lots of 3-ofs in this deck. So if TG Drillfish can attack directly, and you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If all monsters you control are TG monsters, minimum of 1, you can special summon this card from your hand. And when a TG monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target on one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So it's a good way to put itself on the field and with some battle interruption and, attack directly. That's time in the round. Thanks for playing. And again, these three are really good ways to, with your small world lines, because they're all level 1, they're all different types, they're all different attributes, they're all different attack and defense. I'm going to do a quick little rearrange here. There we go, kind of sort of get ourselves organized. We're going to play 2 copies of TG Gear Zombie. You can target one TG monster you control, special summon this card from your hand, and the targeted monster loses 1,000 attack. You only use this effect once per turn. Again, easy ways to get bodies on the field, get your synchro plays rolling, because this one doesn't modulate levels, it just modulates attack, and when you're going first, attack doesn't really mean anything. We're going to play 2 copies of TG Cyber Magician. If you use this face-up card you control as a synchro material for a TG synchro summon, you can use a TG monster in your hand as the other half of the synchro summon. And again, if this card is destroyed this turn, in the end phase, add a different TG from your deck to your hand. All the old TGs all have the same cycling effect in the end phase as long as they're destroyed on the field. And then for a couple 1-0s, we're going to play 1 TG Rush Rhino, 1 TG Striker, and 1 TG Tank Grub. So, Rush Rhino, if this card attacks, it gains 400 attack during the damage step only, and then during the end phase, if it was destroyed on the field, you can add a different TG from your deck to your hand. TG Striker, if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then once per turn during the end phase, if it's destroyed, you can add a different one from your deck to your hand. And finally, TG Tank Grub. If this card you control is used as a synchro material for a TG monster, you can treat it as a non-tuner. And if this card is sent to the graveyard for the summon of a synchro monster, you can summon a TG token, Machine Earth, level 1, 0 attack, 0 defense, in attack position, and you can only use this effect once per turn. So there's a lot of recruiting, and there's a lot of modulation, and there's a lot of replacing themselves, because this deck wants you to synchro climb, and they want you to synchro climb fast. So that's it for your TG monsters. So 22 TG monsters in total, but we're not quite done with the monsters yet, because we're going to play 1 copy of Miscellaneousaurus and 1 copy of Jet Synchron. So we're playing Miscellaneousaurus because it is an easy way to add your Booster Raptor from your deck to your hand, because it's a dinosaur, and you can discard Misk. Now you're safe. You can banish Misk to summon the Booster Raptor from your deck, and then you've still got the summon effect in your hand. And then Jet Synchron, if this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can add 1 junk monster from your deck to your hand. We're not going to do that. We're not playing any junk monsters. But if this card is in the graveyard, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. Just special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use 1 Jet Synchron effect per turn, and only once that turn. And pretty much what we're doing is the same as what every other deck that uses Jet Synchron does, is we're just abusing that effect in the graveyard to help us synchro climb. So 24 monsters total, 22 in archetype, and then 2 kind of recruiters. On to the spells and traps. We're going to play 3 copies of TG Limiter Removal. You can discard 1 card to add 2 TG monsters with different names from your deck to your hand. And you can banish this card from your graveyard and target a TG in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, or if you control a machine TG monster, you can add it to your hand instead. So again, this is one of the best recruiting cards in the game. You discard 1, you add 2. It's a 0, you don't neg. It's a 1-for-1 trade. It's an incredibly good card. Then we're going to play 3 copies of TG All Clear. All TG monsters on the field become machine monsters. During your main phase, you can normal summon one TG monster in addition to your normal summon this turn. You only gain that effect once per turn. And then during your main phase, you can destroy one TG monster in your hand or field, and if you do, add one TG monster with a different name from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Only use this effect once per turn. So again, you get this second effect because if you want to destroy one on the field, all those old TGs will gain the effect to recruit one in the end phase. And then getting a second normal summon is really good, especially when you pair it with your limiter removal, because it lets you search 2 cards. And then, like I said before, we're going to play 3 copies of Small World. And again, because we have so many different types, attributes, attack and defense, this deck is really, really easy to Small World because you can pretty much just use the level modulation as your guide. So Small World has a weird kind of search effect where you reveal a monster in your hand. Then you reveal a monster in your deck that has exactly one thing in common with that monster in hand, being attack, defense, level, attribute, or type. Then you add one monster from your deck to your hand that has exactly one thing in common with the monster from your deck, being attack, defense, level, attribute, or type. So what you do is you banish the 2 that you reveal in your hand and the one in your deck, and then the third one that you reveal gets added to your hand. So, for an example, let's say you're playing TG and you open TG Drillfish. You can go Small World, and you can reveal the TG Drillfish in your hand. Then from your deck, you can reveal the TG Cyber Magician, because the only thing these 2 have in common is that they are both level 1s. And then from your deck to your hand, you can add your TG Rocket Salamander, because the only thing these 2 have in common is their level. Their types are different, their attributes are different, their attack and defense are different. The only thing these 3 cards have in common is they are all level 1s. This is an easy example. So what you would do is you reveal the Drillfish, reveal the Cyber Magician, add the Salamander, and then you banish these 2 face down. Small World is a card that reads incredibly complicated, but once you understand how it works, it's really easy to find the lines. And then for another consistency tool, we're going to play 3 copies of Fossil Dig, because you can add Miscellaneousaurus, use its effect to get your TG Rocket Salamander, and then continue with your effects. Sorry, not your Rocket Salamander, your TG Booster Raptor. Because Small World can add you Miscellaneousaurus. Miscellaneousaurus can discard itself from your hand to the graveyard, making it so your opponent can't respond to the effects of dinosaur monsters. And then Miscellaneousaurus effect in the graveyard to banish itself, to summon a level 1 dinosaur from your deck. Say hello to Booster Raptor. Again, lots of consistency tools to get us what we need to go full combo. And then for the last of the spells, we're going to play 1 Foolish Burial and 1 1-for-1. Again, an easy tool to get access to your Rocket Salamander because it is easily the best starting card in your deck. And the Foolish Burial can also be used to send the Misc or whatever kind of TG you need engraved to resolve some of your effects. And that's it for the spells. Finally, we're going to play 2 traps. We're going to play 2 copies of TG Close. This card, when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated while you control a machine TG monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then, if a synchro monster is banished while this card is in your graveyard, you can set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use 1 effective TG Close effect per turn, and only once that turn. So it's a really cool counter trap Omni negate. Because it's a counter trap, it's going to be incredibly hard for your opponent to be able to respond to it because of the spell speed of counter traps. So that's it for the main deck. Nice clean 40 cards, no ifs, ands, or buts. For the extra deck, we're going to start With our high levels, we're going to work our way down the synchros, and then we're going to talk about our link. So for starters, we're going to play one copy of TG Halberd Cannon and one copy of TG Glaive Blaster. Now, you absolutely could play two Glaive Blasters instead of the Halberd Cannon, and there's also a line in this deck that lets you play Crimson Dragon and then turn it into the Hot Red Calamity, but we're playing this one pure, we're playing this one for fun. So, Halberd Cannon needs one tuner synchro monster and two or more non-tuner synchro monsters. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but in this deck, it's really easy to do. So, must be synchro summon. It cannot be summoned by other ways. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when a monster would be summoned, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. This card must be faceable on the field to activate and resolve this effect. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one TG monster in your graveyard and special summon that target. TG Glaive Blaster. Again, same summoning requirements. One tuner synchro, two or more non-tuner synchro monsters. Must be synchro summoned. Quick effect, you can target one monster on the field, special summon from the extra deck, banish it. You can use this effect a number of times per turn up to the number of non-tuner synchro monsters that were used for this card's synchro summon. And then once per turn, if a monster is banished face up, except during the damage step, you can target one of them and special summon it to your field, ignoring its summoning conditions. So let's say you're playing against Dragon Link, even though the deck's pretty much dead now. Let's say you're playing against Snake Eye, and they summon their Promethean Princess, and you go, okay, Glaive Blaster, I banish it, and now you go, okay, Glaive Blaster, give me it. Very, very cool effect, very, very powerful effect, and these two on the field at the same time is insane to have to deal with. Not only are they both 4,000 attack and defense, but the fact that you get spot removal, non-targeting, and then summon negates are both very strong effects. Then for our 10s, we're going to play one TG Blade Blaster and one Shooting Star Dragon TGEX, and then one Satellite Warrior. So, TG Blade Blaster needs one tuner synchro monsters and one or more non-tuner synchro monsters. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell trap card that targets this face-up card, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard and negate that effect. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you can banish TG monsters from your graveyard and then banish this face-up card on the field. That's a quick effect. And then during the next standby phase, after this card is banished by this effect, special summon this card. So let's say your opponent hits you with some kind of imperm or something. You can go, okay, Blade Blaster, banish from the graveyard, banish itself, which can also trigger your Glaive Blaster to bring it back. But you can go, okay, just going to dodge that negate, and I'll come back in the end phase. Shooting Star Dragon TGEX. One tuner synchro monsters, one non-tuner synchro monsters. When a monster effect is activated that targets a monster you control, quick effect, you can banish one tuner from your graveyard, negate that activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only use each of the following effects of Shooting Star Dragon TGEX once per turn. It's important to know that first effect is not once per turn. Your opponent wants to target, okay, I'll banish a guy, negate the effect. Target a guy, okay, banish a tuner, negate the effect. So for the once per turn effects, you can, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, negate the attack. And during your opponent's turn, if this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 2 synchro monsters, special summon this card. This is an incredibly underrated card in this deck and kind of generically in the game, because if you can just keep getting rid of your tuners in the graveyard to keep negating targeting effects, your opponent could wind up running out of cards very quickly. And finally, Satellite Warrior. One tuner, one or more non-tuner synchro monsters. This is our Baronne de Fleur replacement. If this card is synchro summoned, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of synchro monsters in your graveyard, destroy them. And if you do, this card gains 1,000 attack for each card destroyed. If this synchro summon card is destroyed, you can special summon up to 3 level 8 or lower warrior, synchron, and or starter synchro monsters with different names from your graveyard. We're not really going to use that effect. But the on summon effect to wipe your opponent's board and then gain attack is very good, especially when you use this card going second or when you use it on the crackback of your first turn. Now getting into our lower levels, so we're going to go from 12 to 10 to 5. We're going to play 2 copies of TG over Dragonar. This is probably the most insane card in this deck. So 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuners. If this card is synchro summoned, you can special summon as many TG monsters from your graveyard as in defense position as possible. Also, you cannot special summon the rest of the turn except for TG monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. And if this card is destroyed, draw 1 card. So, a lot of what you're going to do is you're going to cycle through a lot of guys in your main deck. You're going to put a lot of bodies in the graveyard. You're going to synchro this guy. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys back. And we're going to continue our synchro plays from there, which is really, really good when you pair our synchro climbing with our next card, TG Hyper Librarian. Just got the reprint in Rarity 2. I would love to pick up a prismatic version of this card, no, a platinum version of this card. Really bring out that sparkle. So 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuners. When a monster is synchro summoned, that does not only apply to you. Draw 1 card. This card must be faced on the field to activate and resolve its effect. So, on our turn, we're going to draw at least 5 cards off of this guy. And then depending on what your opponent's doing, you can also draw cards on their turn. And we're just going to keep drawing cards until we're happy with our hand. And we're going to continue comboing from there. Not once per turn, generic, just keep bop, 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 bop. 1 TG Power Gladiator. 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuner TG monsters. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage, and if this card on the field is destroyed, draw 1 card. You don't keep this guy around very much. He's pretty much just used for combos, but sometimes he comes up, especially if you can use something like your Dragonar. Because it does not specifically say non-tuners, you can bring this guy back on your second turn, and you can have a Piercer on the field. 1 TG Wonder Magician. 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuner TG monsters. If this card is synchro summoned, target 1 spell trap on the field and destroy that card. If this card on the field is destroyed, draw 1 card. And then once per chain, during your opponent's main phase, you can quick effect immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon 1 monster using this card you control. So, it's a MST, it's a draw 1, and it's a quick effect synchro. It's a decent little card. 1 TG Star Guardian. 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuner TG monsters. Once per chain, during your opponent's main phase, as a quick effect, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, synchro summon using this card you control. You can only use each of the following effects of TG Star Guardian once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 TG monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. And then during your main phase, you can special summon 1 TG monster from your hand. So we're going to go through your combos. You're going to summon Star Guardian. You're going to draw a card off of your Librarian. Star Guardian's going to put a guy back in your hand. You're going to go, okay, cool card to have in hand. Let me just drop that guy back on the field and synchro climb again. There is a lot of steps and a lot of synchros in this deck, and they're all very, very useful. 2 copies of TG Mighty Striker. 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuner monsters. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, once per turn during your opponent's main phase, you can quick effect, that's effect resolved, synchro summon one monster using this card you control. And you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is synchro summon, you can add one TG spell trap from your deck to your hand. And if this card is sent from your monster zone to the graveyard, you can send one TG card from your deck to the graveyard. And that's TG card, that is not monster. Again, easy way to get your synchro climbs, easy way to get your searches, easy way to keep your combos rolling. For the last synchro in our deck, we're going to play one TG Recipro Dragonfly. One tuner, one non-tuner monster. Once per turn, you can select one face-up TG synchro monster you control, accept this card, send it to the graveyard. Then if all the synchro monsters that were used for that synchro summon of that monster are in your graveyard, you can special summon them. So you could synchro climb your way through, tribute a guy, bring them all back, synchro again to keep drawing off of your Hyper Librarian, or to kind of reassess the game state and kind of go on from there. Because if we're using effect to banish a TG from our graveyard for an effect, we can use our Glaive Blaster to just bring it back. Again, very cool deck, very cool way to use our synchros as extenders and then inflict a bajillion damage to our opponent on their turn. Finally, the only non-synchro in our extra deck, TG Trident Launcher. This is a Link 3 and it needs two monsters, two or more effect monsters, including a TG monster. Or a TG tuner, forgive me. If this card is link summoned, you can special summon 3 TG monsters, one from your hand, one from your deck, and one from your graveyard. In defense position to zones that this card points to. And then it locks you into TGs for the rest of the turn. And you can only use this effect once per turn. And then your opponent cannot target TG synchro monsters that this card points to with card effects. So it's a cool extender, it's a cool kind of adapter depending on what you need it to do, especially because it does not specifically say what kind of TGs it can reborn or summon from your hand, deck, and graveyard. So you can bring back something like one of your synchros and continue climbing from there. Now that I've said a bajillion words, and we've gone through the entire deck list, let us know what you think down below. I know I've said a lot in this deck profile, but there's a lot of words on these cards. So stay tuned for the summer of fun. We got a lot of cool stuff coming. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.